full. So we'll kind of just give it another minute while everybody moves from one session to the next session. Hopefully, if you all had a chance to join some sessions earlier, you had some really good conversations happening, and we will continue that conversation just momentarily. So I'm going to give it just another little bit of time, and then we will kick it off officially. So for those of you joining, we're going to kick off just momentarily. I just want to wait another minute before we've got everybody. It looks like everybody in the room. Great. Okay, so I think we can kind of officially begin. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us here today. I just wanted to kind of share that UC San Diego has focused its attention on diversity and equity and inclusion, and in the field of science, this, as you can imagine, is no extraordinary feat. So from Margaret Burbridge to Maria Goeppert-Mayer, the second woman in history other than Marie Curie to win the Nobel Prize, UC San Diego has a strong legacy of women in STEM, and that certainly continues today. So here with me this afternoon is 4 extraordinary female scientists. And so if you will, please join me in welcoming Dr. Vicki Grassian, Distinguished Professor and Chair of the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, Jessica Droge, Vice President at Amgen, Jesse Morton, a postdoctoral fellow at Matrix Sensors, and Shiva Malik, Executive Director and Staff Scientist, Discovery Oncology at Genentech. Dr. Grassian will be moderating this discussion, and as we delve into issues of equity and diversity, both from a personal place and to the workplace. And now it is my distinct honor and pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Grassian, who will be leading today's conversation. So thank you. Dr. Grassian, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Kim. I'm glad to be here, and we have some great panelists that we want to hear from today. So I'll just get started by just asking each of our panelists to address the following question. And that question is, as a female in a typically male-dominated field, please tell us a little bit about your journey in terms of how you got to where you are currently now, and also what made you pursue an education in a STEM field. If you can share that with us. Shiva, do you want to start?
Sure, absolutely. It's such a great pleasure to be here and be in the company of such amazing women. So first, I wanted to say that it's a total honor. So my journey in science actually started as a pretty young child. I was an immigrant, like I'm assuming many of you here today listening to this. I moved to the United States with my family when I was 7 years old from Iran. And as many immigrants probably can relate to this, really having a career in the sciences or engineering was like the only option as I was growing up. So to be completely honest, I didn't really think about anything else. I was learning English at the time, and math and science came to me really naturally just because they kind of transcended the language barrier. But over time, I just developed a huge passion for it. And actually, as an undergraduate at UCLA, I had the honor of working in a research lab for actually Dr. Julie Fagan, who was the first female non-tenured faculty at UCLA who ultimately ended up getting tenure there. And it was there that I just fell in love with science. I worked in her lab from the summer of my freshman year, and I stayed with her till I graduated my senior year. And then, of course, that inspired me to go to graduate school as well. So really, science for me was just a passion, something that I loved. And I didn't give a whole lot of thought to the gender issue until actually a little later on. And maybe we'll come back and we'll talk about that later. But it was just something I loved. And being a woman in science, at least back then as a kid in elementary school and high school and undergrad, didn't seem to be a barrier. But later on, it certainly comes up as a barrier. So
we'll get to that. Thank you for that. Jessica, can you give us some insight into your journey?
Yeah, happy to, and very honored to be here. So I appreciate having the chance to have this great community to get together and discuss. My journey, similar to Shiva's, actually was born out of a lot of actually foundational support from the family. I grew up in Sydney, Australia while I was young, and my parents were Americans. They had moved over there when they were initially married, and actually they decided to come back to the States because they felt that in Australia at the time, they felt that for women, and they had two daughters, myself and my sister, there really wasn't a community there really expecting women to be leaders in any field, right? They were generally looked at as support staff, similar to how we viewed the world maybe in the 1950s. So my parents came back here, and just the assumption was that there was no excuse to be anything but the best that you can be, and drive where your passion takes you. So my mom was a nurse. So my dad was in business. My proclivity was in the math and sciences, and encouraged that. Did my undergrad at UC San Diego in biochemistry, and then my grad school was at UCLA, and I got all of the support that I wanted. And we could talk about the gender implications later on, but even, in elementary school, there was support. There was no difference. I hung out with the boys, and we were in the math club together, and it was fortunately very equal. And I think I'm hoping over time it becomes more and more of that type of environment. So thank you, and we'll get into the details and discussion. I look forward to it.
So Jessie, we'd like to hear from you and about your journey.
Yeah, first, thanks so much for having me. Jessie Morton, recent graduate of UC San Diego's PhD program. I think it's really amazing that of the three panelists, and with such amazing women, the three of us all had really strong family foundational support for pursuing the sciences. And that's something I want to touch on, is just the importance of role models and mentors from a young age, because it seems like all three of us were never told that science was something we couldn't do. And so we never knew it was something we couldn't do. So it was something we did. My mom is an educator. And when I was a kid, she ran the science program at our elementary school. So I was really close to science growing up. And from that sort of early phase, had some really great role models and mentors throughout my career that just kept me going to where I am today.
Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to ask each one of you, different questions now. So Jessica, I'll go to you first. When it comes to the workplace, what have you seen, or what actions have you taken yourself to promote equity? And how effective do you see companies' current efforts focused on diversity? If you can share with us.
Sure. And, my experience is limited to my experience. And so it'd be interesting to hear others' experiences as well. I feel that I've had a fortunate path in my career in terms of the exposure that I've had in the professional mentors. So what I have seen in companies is, especially now, I've been at Amgen for about 15 years, for these larger companies are taking the idea of diversity, the value of bringing people from all different aspects, and how that actually makes the end result, whatever it is, better. So in terms of the efforts that our company does, we have a mentoring program that is company-wide. We're a company of about 20,000 people for women, and it matches employees to be mentors and mentees. We do that one-on-one and in group sessions, and constantly have great success with that, because it allows younger women in their career, at least in the stage of their career, to connect with more senior executives and have that kind of relationship building, networking building, and cross-functional kind of, trade-off stories and how to address different issues, et cetera. We also have what we call an Engage program, which is also matching executives to minority populations that are employees at the company, to ensure that those minority populations connect with executives and vice versa, so that both can see that there is value in coming together, and there is also a richness in terms of what each can bring each other, and truly trying to ensure that we get more minorities represented in more executive slots. So those are kind of on the big company side. I've worked at very small startup companies as well, and there it generally is just a personal journey in terms of making sure that you're working with the right people, and if it's not a right fit, that there's somehow to address it. So that's my exposure so far.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to direct the next question to Shiva. Do you think there still exists a stereotype, so beyond yourself, just in general, that math and science are not for women, or do you think this has changed? And if it has changed, what trends have you seen that have happened for women who are interested in pursuing math and science?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think there's no simple answer to it. I would say absolutely, certainly the way women are viewed in science has changed. Is it perfect? By no means. I think there's still a significant amount of unconscious bias that goes on in terms of how women might be good or approach science versus men. So I think there's that gender piece that continues on. But that being said, I think we have made significant progress as a scientific community. I see that. I mean, I've been at Genentech for about 15 years as well, and I've seen a significant shift in the past 15 years. There's a very strong community of senior female leaders there. There is a culture of giving back, supporting each other. Something I would say I probably didn't experience when I first finished my PhD back in 2000, actually. And the support and the network, I think, that's there now certainly didn't exist 20 years ago, I would say. So I think there is definitely a shift. That being said, I think we still have a lot of work to do. I see that on many fronts. So certainly executive leadership, right? There continues to be a gap. In academia, continues to be a gap in having senior faculty. Even, there's a lot of talk about gender diversity and inclusion in the peer review process in scientific journals. I think that's a significant gap. I know the journals, the big journals, Cell, Nature, and Science, are trying to put forward new policies there, but all those things kind of cumulatively impact your career down the road, right? If you're not reviewing top tier papers or publishing in top tier journals, then you can't get the nice faculty position or the big job, and it percolates. So I think that we continue to have to work on this front, but I'm pretty optimistic. I think that there's been quite a bit of movement and change, and just judging by the fact that we have these terrific women here and a huge audience listening to us, I think is a testament to that.
Thank you very much. So Jessie, I want to go to you as a recent graduate and also former president of SWIGS, the Society for Women in Graduate Studies that we have in the Chemistry and Biochemistry department. So the question is, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? And what do you hope to accomplish both in your work and for paving the way for other women scientists?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Vicki. 10 years is a long time to think ahead. And, now that I, have the PhD and I've been in my job for a year, I feel like I can start thinking that far ahead. The role I currently hold at the small startup that I work for is changes on a daily basis. So, within 2 months of joining the company, I had, I was managing 2 people, and that was something I didn't know I was going to do, but it's something I have learned I really enjoy. I've really enjoyed the leadership aspects of being at the small company, being able to take on those roles. The dynamicism of every day being different is something I really love. And the the idea of guiding projects to a successful completion is really satisfying. So in the next 10 years, I'd hope to keep that up either at small startups or at larger companies, continue on sort of the management leadership track, and be a role model, hopefully. And that kind of leads into what I would hope to do, you know, for women's science. That seems like a big goal, but I think everyone can do something. And Kamala Harris had a quote where she said, when you're the first through the door, you have to make sure it doesn't close behind you. I think I'm paraphrasing. She said it much better. But that's something that I think we can all think a little more about, is who's following behind us. Can we hold the door wider for women of color? What can we do? And so that's something I continue to ask myself every day, and just think, yeah, what the next steps are, what we can learn from, what we can do next.
Vicki, if you don't mind, I'd like to also go to something that Shiva said that reminded me too, just in terms of the domino effect of how, you know, companies, you know, Amgen, Genentech, other companies like that, and the academic centers really interrelate and need to work together, because companies like ours, who, you know, potentially have all of these efforts to go on to increase diversity, we look to the academic centers for, you know, leadership roles, potentially in our scientific advisory boards or as our key opinion leaders, et cetera. And if the academic institutions are a little bit behind, and sometimes I'm just going to say they are, in terms of, you know, fostering diversity and really elevating some of those people, they're not even in the pool of potential applicants, right? Because they haven't been given those leadership roles in the academic centers to be even visible to the larger companies to be able to choose from, and give them that kind of, you know, leadership role in a scientific advisory board position or something like that. So as a community, from an academic center and from the professional centers as well, we really need to work together to maximize exposure and visibility to all of the great skilled work that's out there.
Yeah, and thank you, Jessica. You make an excellent point. And, you know, I think that we are evolving and have moved in the direction you're suggesting of really showcasing our faculty and supporting our students. And, you know, I see Steve Boggs, the Dean of Physical Sciences here. He put together the Student Success Center that is helping make that bridge in some ways between the academic departments and the companies like that you're a part of, all of you are part of. So that's a great point. So the next question I have is to each of you, in terms of thinking about what advice, and I'll go one by one, would you share with the next generation of scientists, many of whom are here today? So Shiva, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I actually love that question. And there's lots of advice to dish out. But I would say, you know, the number one thing when I look back, and if I had to give my younger self some advice, I would say all the thoughts in your head that you can't do it, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, whatever. This answer is probably not the right answer. This idea is probably not that great. Put all that stuff aside. It's all in your head. It's not true. And I see a lot of women struggle with that, or doubt, a lot of self-doubt, or end their idea with a question like, you know, I think this is how it works, right? Like, end it with, this is how it works. That's it. Your idea is just as brilliant as anybody else's. So that would be the number one thing I would say. And it takes, I guess, age and wisdom maybe to look back at it and realize, you know, that those thoughts are in your head and you need to let that go. But that would be probably the number one thing I would tell my younger self and the young women here in the audience, and men, actually, everybody.
Yeah. Jessica, do you want to join in?
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. And I think we just all need to be aware that we carry our own biases. So when we think about, you know, hey, you know, I feel the community out there is biased against me, which absolutely may be true. We also have our own biases against each other in different ways. And so my advice, if possible, is to really understand where the other one potentially is coming from, and truly try to shine through the work that you do and the professional behavior that you exude, um, and truly try to address issues. If issues come up, address them. I cannot tell you, and I think this kind of piggybacks on what Shiva was saying in terms of some personalities, and I'm going to stereotype in terms of women because it's not true for all women, tend to question themselves more than men do. And so they will back out or not project themselves as being confident and truly as skilled as they are. So that's my pieces of advice.
So would you say it's a confidence issue?
I think that's one piece of many pieces. There might be confidence. I say the only thing that we can truly control is ourselves, right? And so you really do need to think, what can I do in this situation to make the most positive outcome? And you really got to look inside and say, what's blocking me externally and how do I address that? And then what can I do and change myself to help with the external situation?
Thank you. Jessie.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm in a great place to be giving advice. I'm just like you guys. But I would say don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I think that a lot of change happens because someone asks for something. I think that there's not a lot of, in general, academia and industry is not filled with people that hate women. They're just filled with being institutions that have done things a certain way for a long time, and there's a sense that you have to fall in line with how things have been done before, but the way things change is by asking for what you need, and in a lot of cases just asking is enough, and if it's not, just know that there are people that will fight with you and that will help you get what you need.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I want to, think towards the future. Okay, so think about, I don't know, a perfect world, a more equitable world. So looking towards the future, where do you think we need to go to create a more equitable workplace environment for women, for people of color, just sort of thinking towards the future? What needs to happen in order to create that? There's been a lot of conversations going on these days, and where are we going to, what do we need to do to make that happen? And so do you want me to start in the opposite direction this time with you, Jessie, and then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, moving into the future, I think it's a lot of what Jessica and Shiva were saying earlier, of just listening, being open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, and yeah, what I said before, which is having people brave enough to stand up and say what they need to do the best that they can do. Yeah, I think that specifically includes promoting people of color, women of color in the sciences, because something that we had sort of all said was that, from a young age, we were never told we couldn't do something. And so where are people being told that they can't do something, and how do we take that away? How do we make it so that no one has that in their path, blocking their path? Yeah.
Thank you. So Jessica, do you want to think towards the future? I know you've been working hard on this question, and where are we going from here on?
We're making progress. It's been slower than I think anybody is happy with, but I think when you get leaders in roles that represent who you feel like represents you, it removes those barriers that you inflict upon yourself, like, oh, I couldn't even do that. Maybe you don't even put that barrier up because it doesn't even occur to you that you could, right? And so having those leaders and solid leaders, right? Not just, a token person that's offensive, but it's more that truly there's a whole diverse group of people that are highly skilled for all of these positions, even, at the top, and to have them up there, be successful, and show people that can help remove biases from people who have judged groups of people, and it can help those that see themselves in that person, and they can rise above and beyond even that person.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with everything that's been said. I would add, I think what I see happening, and I think will be more of in the future, is, more transparency from organizations really acknowledging the, the gender bias, basically defining the problem in a very transparent way. I think we can't address the issues that we have with diversity and inclusion unless we're transparent and we acknowledge that we actually have a problem. And so I look forward to, just like it's been done with gender diversity, in Silicon Valley, to see what the data looks like in organizations, what is diversity and inclusion like in both academic institutions and biotechnology, pharmaceutical companies, and what are some goals we can realistically set? Because it's not enough to just have the data and acknowledge that there's a problem, but really figuring out how you can get to a better place and what are some goals, and how can we get there, beyond education and diversity and inclusion training and all the things that we talk about. Training alone isn't sufficient, right? We actually have to set some metrics to get there. The other thing I would say is, I think it has to start really early, from as early as our educational system, because a lot of the issues arise, right? It's a pipeline of people that we see where it narrows down as you get into more senior roles. And so it's obviously a complex problem, but I think being as transparent, I look forward to our entire community being as transparent as possible about this, even though it might be very difficult, obviously.
And just to touch on a little bit of the transparency, I think it's fascinating with this pandemic and people working, from home. I think it has been, it's hurt a lot of people, obviously, but it's been so transparent, at least at our company, how generally mothers are so impacted, right, by in their careers, by having, young kids that they need to take care of. And it generally falls on the mothers, not all the time, but you see that now because you're looking into their home and you see all the things that they're juggling, et cetera. And that's not going to go away. I in no way think, we should send all kids, from the age of 0 to boarding schools and not worry about them. There are things that are not equal, right? And I think that's great. That's life. But we all need to be very clear on how we can address it and adjust to make them, work in some way.
Yeah, I think transparency is key. And it's interesting how it's been brought up here today in terms of just sort of where we're at. What are the numbers? What are the data? Where are we at? I always think about transparency, at least in academics, from what are the processes? Who gets to teach that class? Who gets to be on that key committee? And that's some of the things that we're working on, is transparency of processes and why things happen. And so I think all of these issues are really important. I really appreciate the 3 panelists answering the questions that I put forward. And I know that, and so thank you all. You have great backgrounds to speak from, and I've learned a lot. I've been around a long time, and today I've learned a lot from the 3 of you. And I hope to continue to learn, because now I want to sort of transition us to hearing more from questions from the audience. And I think, Kim, you're going to lead that, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Dr. Grassian. And also just to share that we also have a student with us, Kayla, who's also going to help us, because I see that there's quite a bit of questions coming in from the chat. And so if I'm going to kind of take one and we'll sort of tag team it along. But I think the first one, it really kind of addresses, I think, a little bit, Jessica, you talked, kind of about the executive program and mentoring and that type within the company. But this is an interesting question of what kind of outreach projects are all of you either a part of or would like to be a part of to promote young girls to consider a career in the STEM field? So I think, I don't know if maybe Jessica, since I sort of mentioned your name, if you want to kind of answer that one first, and then I'll sort of poke it around to everybody afterwards.
Sure, absolutely. two key projects internally at the company that I'm involved with are the projects that I mentioned before, which are the a women mentoring system where we have mentors every year and we take those mentors throughout the year and have group discussions with them, et cetera. And then the Engage program where executives are and people from minority groups within the company are connected and have recurring meetings and discussions, and they're just informal, just to touch base, to connect. And then the other, Amgen has actually a lot of different opportunities to participate. And the other thing that I have done and look forward to doing again is they have this STEM outreach to high schools. And it's not specific to women, but it is specific to what they consider more disadvantaged high schools. And so depending on where you live, you go to those high schools and present what you do or something interesting about science or math, et cetera, for the day, for all of the classes for that high school. And so I had the opportunity to do that at a high school in LA, in more of a disadvantaged area where I think over 85% were considered below the poverty line. And I felt so energized by that, and I'm hoping that the students did too. I felt their energy, and I hope that the minority groups there, mostly a Latino population, really saw that they can do this too, be them women or men, but if they're interested in the sciences, it's not impossible. You know, they can take a route and get into these types of positions, you know. So it's just the fact that being able to see that they can do this, and there's lots of different jobs along the way that they can participate in. So those are three things that I'm involved in.
I think you touched on something really interesting, that there are many jobs opportunity. So I think just, again, I try to say that to all of our students constantly: open your eyes. There's a world of possibilities in front of you. And so I've had the opportunity also to be involved in some of those programs. It's definitely warms your heart to see some of the kids get really excited. It certainly does mine. Shiva, have you been a part of any of these type of projects or organizations to promote?
Yes, I have. I've done a few things to promote women in STEM, and again, related to a lot of mentorship that Jessica spoke of. I really actually enjoy the mentoring part and just the one-on-one building relationships with other women. But I've done a couple of formal things. One is I was a board member up until about a year ago on Project Scientist, which is a nonprofit organization focused on coaching and mentoring young girls in STEM. We had these summer academies for young girls, and it started at the elementary school age level all the way through high school. You know, I was a mentor at the events there, and, you know, helped kind of build the strategy for the growth of that organization. In addition, UC Berkeley has a really terrific mentoring program called the Bergeron Scholarship Program. And I've been a mentor for undergrads in that program as well. And in fact, one of the undergrads that I mentored, she ended up doing an internship in my lab at Genentech. She ended up taking like a contractor position for a year at Genentech, networked and met a lot of other people, and then just started graduate school at UCSF. So, and we still stay in touch. She's a fantastic, just bright young lady. And I really enjoy, you know, kind of building those relationships with the students. I think it's a terrific opportunity, and as enriching for me as I hope it is for them. So
I hope so too. We encourage it all the time. And then Jessie, I know you're kind of more fresh out of school, but I think just being part of SWIGS and being the president, did you guys as a student organization do any sort of outreach towards the younger generation, even from like the high school age?
Yeah, absolutely. We were lucky to be a part of, and I think they still participate. I think SWIG still participates in a great conference that takes place every year, except maybe this past year, it's pandemic, called Expanding Your Horizons. It's held at the University of San Diego. It brings hundreds of middle and high school aged girls to USD, and companies and student groups and things like that each have little programs that they set up of different sort of science demos, and they're all themed. So we had one that was themed around, molecular gastronomy. And so we would do kind of food-based science experiments, and the girls come through in small groups of like 8 to 10. So they get really sort of personal attention. They get to do these science demos. And it's a great kind of one-day event. And then there are a couple other things. The American Chemical Society hosts Chem Expo every year, and that's not targeted just to young girls, but young kids in general during, I think it's American Chemistry Week or something like that. And it's a great event that's held at Miramar College, I think. And so Swigs is able to participate in that every year. And my goal when I joined this startup was to sort of get my startup involved in some of these things. But of course, I joined it last January, and then the pandemic hit in March, and everything kind of, So
That's
maybe
okay. It's
in
still time.
future,
You can do it.
yeah, maybe in future years, I'll be able to get them involved in some of those things.
Absolutely. All right, Kayla, I think I don't want to miss questions. Kayla, I think you've been kind of monitoring with me. Do you want to kind of grab a question and shoot that over to our panelists?
Yeah, so we actually have two questions that kind of go hand in hand. So Tyler asked, how should students in STEM approach seeking internship or experience opportunities? And Varsha also added on to that, if any of you all would be able to share any resources where we could find mentors or, especially for students who are really trying to kickstart their career.
I was going to say, I could probably even take that with the Student Success Center's mentoring program. But let's see, do we want...
I can maybe speak to, we have a fantastic internship program at Genentech, and I can tell you it's highly competitive. So there's hundreds of undergrads or grad students that will apply for the positions. But I think really being kind of smart and focused in your search is the best way to go about it. So like for Genentech or even, other academic institutes, like looking up the people whose lab you want to join. Take the time for Genentech, all the lab heads are on the website. You can find out what their research is and then reach out to them directly, either through their LinkedIn, or you can look up people's emails through their publications and, be really targeted and tell them what your interest is in their work. I can tell you, I've had several interns, the intern that I just spoke to you about who I mentored, but also another intern who was an undergraduate at Stanford. And she came back to my lab 3 summers in a row. Again, wrote to me originally, was just interested in my lab, ended up doing her honors thesis from the research of my lab. So there's tons of potential of things to do. It's just, I think being very intentional, just applying through the regular website might not be enough. Do that and take advantage of other approaches or your network of people, obviously.
I agree. I'm just sort of scoping some of the questions. This one is actually very specific, Jessica, about the programs that you mentioned for the Engage program and the governance for the Enterprise Mentoring Program. Are they run by the affinity groups or by the HR?
Ooh, interesting question.
Yeah, that's why I'm pulling that one up.
And it's a great question. I believe, and so don't quote me on this. The Engage program, I believe, is run with a collaboration between HR and the affinity groups. And then I believe that the Enterprise, which is the women's mentoring, is actually more self-grown, believe it or not. And so it's not run through HR. It's actually all of us taking on and rotating leadership positions in that to coordinate it and move it forward. And one thing that's nice about it is that we collate all of this information and training material and how to be, how to present yourself, how to create, an elevator speech, how to, maneuver office politics, and, Harvard Business School has lots of resources that we tap into too, and all that gets collated and everybody shares that information. So that's more the employees themselves running that.
That's cool. And I know we're going to be hosting a lot of workshops on some of those very topics. And this is something I stress all the time as the alumni director about networking and, building your network until you do it when at the beginning and not at the end. So this one is kind of a little bit everybody, and I'll start with you since I have you on the screen. Has networking changed as you've advanced in your career? So I thought that's an interesting angle to how you think about networking.
Interesting angle. Yes, it is. As I advance in my career, and maybe this isn't off topic, but I always worry, as you actually get up higher in the ladder, do you become more disconnected?
Right.
And networking is easier because you have the title and it opens up a lot of doors. People want to talk to you, etc. But you don't get, I think you're not hearing reality as much as when you are potentially lower in the career ladder. And so there are pluses and minuses to networking as you advance in your career. And you just need to be cognizant of that. When you're lower in your career ladder, the networking that you should do is obviously with your peers and also, supervisors and et cetera. Never give up on that. But as you advance in your career, one thing I would just suggest is just be knowledgeable of how people are seeing you and what kind of feedback are you getting, and is it based in reality? I don't know if that's answering the question per se, but
no, I think it is. Shiva, do you have anything you want to kind of add to that? How does anything change with your networking and like who you kind of interact with as you've progressed in your field?
Yeah, I would say, actually, I've kind of had a little bit of a personal journey on this. I'll maybe speak. So,
Cool.
I kind of, for a while, to be honest, I was just like, doing my work and really enjoying, actually just genuinely happy with the work I was doing at Genentech, and didn't really bother to do a lot of networking because I thought, why do I need to network? And why, I'm perfectly happy doing what I'm doing. And I think that's a mistake. That's not a good attitude to have, actually. And I think I've had in the past several years, I've had a little bit of a mind shift that networking is, yes, a piece of it is about you and expanding your network of people, but really a big part of it is how can I help other people? And that part of it feels really good. And it's that I feel like I do a lot more of now, actually, than I did in the past, where it's, okay, hey, I know you, let me try to connect you to somebody else, or I might know of somebody that could help you with this or that, the other. So, and you'd be surprised how much you get back from that kind of networking. And so I guess I would encourage everybody to think about networking as, how can you help somebody else? Just turn around the way you might think about it, rather than you need something, how are you going to get that? So, and never put your head in the sand, I guess, and think, I don't need to, do any of that because I'm happy, everything's fine. It's always great to have a broad network of people to reach out to. Actually, you, Kim, reaching out to me was one of the
I was gonna say I
expanding my network. I was thrilled to do that. I always wanted to like reconnect with UCSD in a different way outside of like my thesis advisor and Susan Taylor, like some of the professors that I still keep in touch with, like in a different way. And this was just like a terrific opportunity. And I feel totally enriched by this opportunity, that the times that we've gotten to engage. So anyway.
Love it. And I think, and you and I have talked about this in actual, terms, because again, we can sit here all day and say like, yes, you should reach out and you should network and you should do this and all of that. But what are some real practical tips for students in their early careers to go about reaching out to folks who inspire them? Because I know that sometimes is a big challenge. And I've talked about that with students. They feel overwhelmed of like, oh my God, I can't email that, person on LinkedIn. Like, like, how am I going to reach out to you? Or, they get nervous. And we can provide templates and, things of that nature to ease that. But what are some kind of tips to calm some of those jitters for folks? I know I have my ways of offering that advice. Just do it.
Yeah, I have some, I don't know if it's super helpful, but networking is a really scary word to me because it implies going up to someone and, like you guys were saying, asking for something, asking
Yeah.
for something that will help you in your career. But you can think of networking as just having conversations too. So if you're an undergrad and you have a study group, you're networking with your study group. Maybe you're not friends outside, but you're learning from each other and you're collaborating on scientific ideas. When you're in grad school, collaborators at other schools are networking. You're working together to a common goal and you're helping each other. So you're already networking is the thing. So if you can sort of take away the scariness of that word and just have it be having a conversation, saying, I think I can help you with this and you can help me with this, then maybe that helps take away some of the fear around it.
And I think, as Shiva said, if you're nervous about reaching out, don't be. I think we enjoy it. And, it's a bandwidth issue potentially in terms of responding to everybody, but there's nothing wrong in reaching out. I would just say be prepared for what you want to talk about. It's on you to have the agenda and the conversation pieces and the specific questions that you want to ask. But I love when people reach out. I wish I had more time to really connect with as many as I could, but yeah, I'm trying. I have 2 high schoolers. I'm trying to get them to get into it too. So I know the struggle and the challenge and the threshold.
And I think, for me, sometimes I'd say to students, like, and if somebody doesn't respond, that's okay too. Sometimes y'all are busy. It doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong or that you shouldn't have done it. It just may simply be that the person is just busy and you keep pursuing. Kayla, I've kind of lost some of the chat box. Do you want to grab a question for me and shoot that over to the panelists?
Yeah, definitely. So Elan mentioned in the chat box removing certain words such as sorry in her emails. And it had me thinking, this is my own question actually. What are ways that we as women can positively command respect in our workplaces?
Who wants to tackle that one?
Well, I'll just say, it's probably the obvious, but don't pretend to be somebody you are not. Just speak truthfully, objectively, clearly, and professionally. And I think that in and of itself will garner respect. So.
Yeah, completely agree. Being your authentic self is, I think, one of the most important things, and not apologizing for it. That's who you are. Own that.
Anything to add, Jessie?
No, being, a year into my career, I think I'm still working on it too. It's just about treating people how you want to be treated. And if, communication issues arise and women, we know we can fall on the being sort of called words for being confident, for instance. And so it's important to just not only have an eye on how you want to come across, but also being true to yourself and understanding that you deserve respect for being where you are because you belong where you are.
And I'm just noticing, and I hope it's okay, I was noticing on the chat that somebody about imposter syndrome. And I have to say, before I even heard that term, that is and was something that causes me great stress. Like, what am I doing here? And, doesn't everybody realize that I'm not supposed to be here? So, and different people have it to a different level. Do you ever get over it? I don't know, because I'm not over it. But you just got to keep working through it and realize that everybody, you got to add value and do your homework, and be credible.
Yeah, I remember one of like the key moments in my career, this is early on. I had just had my second son, my second baby, and I came back from maternity leave. And, you know, I had not been working for 3 months. I took 4.5 months off. So I had not been at work for that long. And my boss at the time, she was a woman, had 2 kids of her own. Her kids were quite a bit older than mine. And I remember a couple weeks into it, she asked me to present the project I was working on in front of like our scientific advisory board. So it was a very big deal. In fact, I remember Frank McCormick, who is a big leader in the RAS field, was going to be there. And I told her, I was like, I can't do this. Her name was Allison. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm just not ready for it. And I will never forget this. She turned around to me and said, I fought for this for you. You can do it and you will do it. And I like that just instilled this confidence in me, like, okay, she believes in me, I can do it. And so I did, and it wasn't perfect. It was certainly not the best presentation I'd ever given. You know, I was kind of rattled, like right back from maternity leave. It's not like you were feeling, you know, totally confident, but I did it and just muddled through it and it was fine. But it proved to me like, yeah, I'm okay. And I can do this. But, you know, I think a lot about that. Like, I definitely had the imposter syndrome, like, I can't do this anymore. And then, but importantly, I had another woman there that had my back and believed in me. So I think back to that. I mean, that was 15 years ago. So, but anyway, it still is, you know, on top of mind for me of like a pivotal moment of somebody really kind of lifting me up when I needed it.
So that leads me to another question that's sort of, I know for me personally, even at every stage of my career and switched careers and all of that, I've thought, and I know you've talked about being a mentor, but what about you at different stages of your career? Like, who has been a role model for you or somebody that you've thought about that has really mentored you and guided you during sort of some of these stages?
I'll just dive in. There's been various mentors throughout my career. Some of them, maybe they didn't even know really, right? Maybe it wasn't a deliberate official mentor-mentee relationship. And certainly most of them were men. So I'm not saying, and I hope this group doesn't think that mentors need to be of your same, you know, whatever. It's just somebody who believes in you. And like Shiva was saying, just either deliberately or just because they have such solid foundation and belief that in your abilities, they boost you up and they give you that confidence and they give you the opportunities and they advocate for you. So, and that's along your career, different pathways, and they may be your boss, which is ideal. Actually, there's like terminology about mentors being your boss or not. So, but then they may be a colleague, they may be another senior executive. So, but it has to, I think the best mentors are really organically, you know, produced because of that. They see you as being authentic and great and shining and they want to help you and vice versa.
Yeah, I agree. Kayla, have I missed any? I know we've got only just like a few minutes left. I don't want to try to get to everybody's question as best as possible. Is there anything that you can see that sort of has chimed in that I've missed?
Yeah, so Tyler asked another question. What are some ways to respond both personally and professionally to setbacks that you may experience for making space for yourself at the table?
Good question. Jesse, do you want to maybe?
Yeah, sure.
That one?
Yeah, so setbacks are real, especially in science. A lot of doing research and development is just failing every day, you know, 8 days in a row. So I think it's good to, especially if you're in a STEM field, as early as possible, cultivate a sense of self that is separate from your work product. So, or separate from your research product, because the closer those two things get tied together, the more kind of ups and downs you're going to experience, because research is always going to go one direction or another. You don't always know which direction it's going to go. So the sooner you can make space for yourself outside of your work, I think the better off you're going to be in the long term, and it'll make you more resilient to those setbacks when they do come. And there will be setbacks, right? So not always will there be the space at the table that you want there to be. Not always will you get that internship or that job. But I think it's important to remember that you didn't apply for that job out of nowhere. You didn't want that for no reason. You wanted it because you were qualified. So that means there's not a lot of reason to give up. There's just more reason to go out and look for something else, something potentially better, and see what you can take out of it and learn from it. Yeah, I think
Very well
that's
said.
it.
Anyone else want to kind of share some insights into that?
I just 100% agree with Jesse, and I think that even the hardest setbacks can, give yourself time to mourn, but don't blame anybody else, and don't blame yourself.
Yeah.
Just take it as a lesson learned. It's a gift. What did you get out of it? To me, there's no failed experience, because you can always learn, and then next time improve.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely can empathize with that. And, sometimes I would say, even to myself, I would do it. I would literally physically leave the room and walk around the block, shake it off, and come back. And, I came from a career of more of in the art field of subjective, where you do try so hard not to take anything personally. I mean, we have just literally a few minutes left before I kind of turn it back over to Dr. Grassian. Is there any kind of parting words that any of you want to kind of leave behind today?
I mean, I would just say it's such a great thing that we're here today. We're talking about diversity and inclusion. We have a community to do that with. And it's happening at all levels across the board. I mean, I'm just like feeling optimistic despite the pandemic, despite the terrible 2020 we all had. It's just, I don't know, just being here today was inspiring. So I just want to thank everybody, because it has been tough, and it's these little moments and the opportunity to speak to everybody and just speak from your heart and hopefully help people. Even if it's one person that got a small nugget out of what we talked about today, I think is just a gift. So I just wanted to thank everybody.
I concur. I've learned a lot. I think that it's beautiful to be in a safe environment like this, where we can be our authentic selves and ask these questions and really have some of these conversations. And I think someone said it, earlier. I think just acknowledgement, I think is a really key important word of just saying, where do we go for next steps? So I don't know if Dr. Grassian, if you have any kind of last words before our 2 minutes are up behind.
No, I think we've had a great conversation, and I really want to thank the impressive and insightful panelists, Dr. Shiva Malik, Dr. Jessica Droge, and Dr. Jesse Morton. Thank you so much. I also want to thank you, Kim Peters and Kayla Monet, for doing the chat. And last but not least, thank all the participants here, because I think you had really good questions that challenged our panelists and made us all think really hard about these issues that we're talking about today. So thank you all. And this has been a great event, Kim and everybody. So thank you for coming.
I absolutely agree. Thank you all to our panelists. Thank you, Dr. Grassian, for moderating this panel. I do believe that we have some resources and things that I'm not sure if we have a slide on that. But I do know I've seen it a little bit of the chatter in the chat box, but Tritons Connect has been, kind of a program that launched. I think I've been here at the university for about a little over a year, and it's just grown and grown, and it's a really great resource for everybody. And then also I will plug for the Student Success Center at the Division of Physical Sciences. If you want to get involved, if you want to think about mentoring, I know the program did kick off, but we're always looking for futures, and it's a wonderful opportunity to give back to our students. So I thank you all for coming today. If there's any questions, you can always reach out to any of us here. And I think that kind of wraps it up for us. So unless there's further ado, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your sessions. I know that there's some really fabulous ones. I'm planning on going to the sea. I think it's the stars to the sea or the sea to the stars. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. As you're jumping off, we hope you join us at our 4:30 p.m. sessions today back in that main conference hub. You'll see those suite of events as well as our 5:30 p.m. networking. And if not, we'll catch you all tomorrow for our keynote and wonderful closing and sessions tomorrow. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.